Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I get to learn a little bit about somebody else's perspective on movies. And this week, I have my pal Alice from SiftPop. Alice, thank you so much for coming on for a third time.
I'm so excited to be back. It's been too long in between times. Next one will have to do less of a gap.
Yeah, I started to realize I've interviewed a couple people in the past week or so for their third rounds, and it had been 100 episodes since. And I'm like, I'm like, it's
Fair.
literally 2 years. And
Honestly, I can't believe it's September. It's freaking me out. Time is just hurtling by.
yeah, my 4 months of summer working at a college just poof,
Yeah.
disappeared. But it's great having you back. And as always, would you like to shamelessly plug anything for our audience to check out your work?
Yeah, sure. So I am a writer for SiftPop.com, like Shane. And so so you can go there and check out a bunch of stuff. So do a monthly review. And also I have a monthly column called One Stop Pop, where
Mhm.
basically based on whatever was either most popular or very much talked about in the previous month, I recommend the pieces of media that you might like if you really like that. So for example, I did Talk to Me. So, and typically the other pieces of media are like a video game, a podcast, or an album, and a TV show and a book. So just to help kind of get those tastes. Otherwise, you can find me on Letterboxd and Instagram at AliGmick, ALIGMICH. And I also have a YouTube channel that has been very much on hiatus for a bit because, honeymoons of my co-host, and also just like, oh my gosh, it's September. But we do have quite a few videos, and we're in the process of of setting up a new format. So we'll be
Nice.
restarting that soon. And that's Clean Slate Reviews on YouTube.
Because I have listened to some of the episodes of your
Yeah.
show. I
Oh,
I distinctly recall Thor Love and Thunder
yeah.
and being happy that somebody else didn't hate it.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm just like, because I walked out like I had a lot of fun with this, and everybody's
And
like,
then everyone's
"This
like,
is the
this is,
worst," and I'm
yeah.
just like,
I think it really is just like, how are you have to be in the chaotic mind, like able to just take in the chaotic mindset. And I was like, yes, I understand that there was a lot happening that maybe didn't make sense or whatever, but I really enjoyed a lot of the elements. So I had a really good time. So I don't mind anything about it. Also, the
yeah,
goats still make me laugh. I just,
ah!
yeah, screaming. I just
I,
couldn't handle it. I was like, this
I
is too good.
do. I would love to see what that film would have been if it wasn't for Bob Chapek being like, "You need to make this under 2 hours."
Yes. Okay. But yes, that's absolutely because I feel like Taika had a plan and he made it was probably like 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is pretty standard nowadays.
Mhm.
And then yeah, Bob Chapek, who just came in and like screwed with things and then left, thank everything.
Yeah,
Not that, Bob Iger's good creatively, but bad support the strikes,
money
bad on the
miser.
studio level. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I reckon that he was just like, whatever. I reckon Taika was just like, whatever, I'm just gonna like cut out a bunch of stuff. And now it doesn't make sense and I don't care. I'm taking the money and going. I'm gonna go make a movie about a Samoan soccer team
Oh
now.
my God, I'm so ready for next goal wins. Oh,
I know. I'm just ready. I haven't seen Michael Fassbender in ages. I feel like
no,
him and
it's
Alicia Vikander have just been living their best life, you
yeah.
know.
When she
And then
popped up
he's
in
like,
The
oh
Green Knight, I was
yeah,
like, thank God. Like I
yeah.
missed her so much. I'm just like,
I
where have
know.
you been?
You know what's so funny? She looks so similar to Chris Evans's new wife, Alba Baptista. Like they look, if you look them up, Alba Baptista and Alicia Vikander, they look like they could be, siblings or like for twins or something. Because Alba Baptista is in Warrior Nun, and I really enjoy
Uh,
that
oh,
show. Yeah, she's the chick from Warrior Nun.
Mhm.
And now she's Chris Evans's wife.
There you go.
And yeah, there you go. And it's just I'm always like, I haven't seen Alicia. Wait, I saw no, that wasn't her. That was the other one. But yeah, I want Alicia. Alicia Vikander, where'd you go? Come back. Do more. I really like you.
He's great. Michael Fassbender's great, but Michael Fassbender's ready for a big fall between The
Yeah.
Killer and Next Goal Wins. So exciting
Yeah.
times.
Yes, I'm also excited that he's back because I feel like they were both so big. Then they
Mhm.
got married, then they did the Lighthouse movie, and then I feel like they just retired and went, I'm just gonna go chill for like a few years and then come back. So yeah.
Back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
But let's get things started.
Let's
So,
go.
Alice, you have a day off and you want to
Mhm.
do a movie marathon. What's going to be the theme of your movie marathon?
Harry Potter, obviously,
There you
especially if
go.
I could force other people to watch it with me. There's a couple of these questions where I've got like two answers depending on the mood I'm in. So,
Mhm.
Harry Potter always, especially if I haven't rewatched them that year yet,
Mhm.
because duh.
Yeah.
That'll be you'll notice a thread. I feel like all of my questions, half the time, like a few of the answers are Harry Potter. Um, the other one is Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
and that is because I've recently had an inkling to watch. And actually, I've been wanting to rewatch the theatrical versions because I feel like since they came out in theaters, I haven't like rewatched the theatrical versions because you always, every time anyone does a marathon, you're like, oh, you have to watch the extended edition. And I'm just like, I feel like I want to go back and watch what I was presented in cinema because I can't
Mhm.
remember that experience. So I feel like I feel like I'm going to do that soon anyway, just because I also have them on 4K now.
Yeah,
And,
nice.
it's going to, I'll put them in my PS5. It's going to look so good.
So good. I rewatched all three of them over the summer for my
Mm,
new podcast, Wasteland Vintage Roadshow,
mm,
and got to do an episode for each of them. But like I did watch the theatrical cut
yeah.
to like we're watching that part, and you know the pacings are very different
Yeah.
because you could tell like especially with Return of the King when you add 50 minutes into the movie
You
and
can
you
feel
have
it.
Gimli's prolonged like trying to blow out ghosts
Yeah.
sequence, and it's just like they kind of made him a clown. I don't think we really
Yeah.
needed this, which is fine, which is why I
There's a
got to
reason
leave it.
it's in the exactly. It's a reason it's the
Yes.
extended edition. Well, that's the thing. I feel like everyone's like, "Oh, you have to watch the extended edition. You have to watch the extended edition." But you have to remember, like, especially Return of the King, the theatrical edition is the version that won all the Oscars.
Yes.
So, like, there's a reason for that. And I do think that they do flow better in the like. There's a reason they were the theatrical
Oh,
versions.
Fellowship moves so good.
Yeah.
That 3 hours is like the smoothest 3 hours you're ever gonna
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
So now, speaking of having some friends to
Mm.
watch a movie marathon, which also I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so I would love that too.
Yes.
Say that you have a friend who's never watched a movie before. What would you
Hmm.
show them?
So this one was an interesting one because I feel like there's a difference between what I'd want to show them and what I should show them.
Yeah.
Because that was also very similar to your final question when I was putting them together. It's like I could just put all of my favorite movies, but that's probably not right. So I went with two options, and I think it would depend on the type of person, and I think that they would present different vasts of like or possibilities around film. So my first one is actually Interstellar because I think that's like as big of a movie. I know that you could do bigger movies or whatever, but like having rewatched it recently and then watched all the behind the scenes and everything, I think there's something magical about this, ironically, about a story that is about, the expansiveness of space and our place in it and the way in which it's like I watched it literally, I think a week or two ago, and I was like, oh my God, this is like 10 years old. It does not feel 10 years old. It's
No, it
crazy.
does not.
So I think that would just blow, like if that's the first movie you've ever watched, imagine like that's the first one and then everything else you're just like, oh, I can do this. The other option is I think an excellent, just a very excellent storytelling and like a film that's excellent in its storytelling. And I think would be really good, especially if the person's maybe more of a reader, and
Mhm.
this could be a good way to get them into it, which is Princess Bride, because that's so tightly told. It's a very short, 90-minute film that is really entertaining and I think would be a great entry into like, this is the possibility of film. And
Yeah,
this is how it can enhance the stories. Yeah.
absolutely. Interstellar. Well, it's funny because every time somebody posts a shot of Davy Jones from
Yeah.
Dead Man's Chest, and I'm like, how the hell
Yeah.
is this 20 years old?
I know.
Looks
That's
so much
crazy.
better than a lot of things we see now. And
And
Interstellar,
the
well,
Flash. Yeah.
you well, you watch Interstellar and you know so much of it's practical to
Yeah.
the extent that it can be. And that's what works. That's why
Yeah.
Fury Road works. That's why Christopher Nolan films work, is because
Mm-hmm.
as much of it as possible is practical. And
Yeah.
then you use the computer generated effects to add things that you can't.
Yeah.
And
Like space.
yeah. And like, well, the thing is like, Christopher Nolan goes into an insane amount of prep.
Mm-hmm.
Like he tried to create the most photorealistic black hole that you could possibly
I know.
imagine.
I know. Well, I mean, the fact that they just had Kip Thorne on staff and he would be
Yes.
like, okay, I want a black hole. And he'd be like, all right, I'll go and do a bunch of like mathematical equations
Yes.
to give you the exact dimensions you'd need. And like, actually, the film is because of the film, there have been scientific discoveries because of like, that's just crazy to me. But
Right.
it makes sense because watching it, it's like, it's so crazy to watch because yes, obviously there's no wormhole and this is all based
Yeah.
on theory, but it could happen. And it
Yeah.
doesn't feel fake. Like even when
No.
he's in the Tesseract and it's bizarre, it's like,
I started getting flashbacks of physics class in high school when we watched
yeah,
that Nova
yeah,
special on string theory. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh my God, strings
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
And
And speaking of strings, I think for me as well, it's honestly, I think one of the best scores in cinema. Like, I think Hans Zimmer, like the fact that he didn't win, I was like, what won again? And it was Grand Budapest, which look, I really like Alexandre Desplat, and
yeah,
the Oscars really like him because every time he's nominated, half the time he wins. But this score is just something else, it was
it's lit.
like the use of the church organ was just fucking, it was genius.
I I have a deep, 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 deep obsession with organs and movie
Hmm.
scores. And Hans Zimmer's just like, you want some? And I'm just like, yes. That's why
Yeah.
that's why I listen to Dead Man's Chest score over and
Mm,
over again.
mm,
And it's a tough thing because there's each of those scores are so perfect for their movies and they're so
yes.
different. But
Yeah.
obviously, I think there's a lot more complexity to what like
Mm,
Hans Zimmer's doing and heavy lifting to be able to like capture that big scale. I love them both, and Grand Budapest just swept up like all the technical
yeah.
Oscars
Which
that
I get, but
yeah,
like with time, I'm much more willing. I do listen to the Interstellar score all the time because
yeah.
the suite is just beautiful. And I mean, again, having watched all the behind the scenes the other day, and some of the sounds, he was just like, "Oh, what would happen if you just hit the side of the cello?" And then just like, it's just so bizarre how he's like, what if we just had them hit the open of the trumpets
He
instead
has to
of
be like
and
the
just
most interesting composer to interview because it's so weird. Um,
I just love his processes. Like, what if we just did this? What if we got a
yeah,
pencil and
yeah.
just plucked the violin string? I'm like,
And then to your other one, Princess
yes,
Bride, like Princess Bride's like the perfect movie that
Yeah.
balances everything. It
Yes.
has romance, it has adventure, it has some scary moments, it has
Yeah.
a ton of laughs. And
Mm-hmm.
I have multiple times been told in public that I look like Fezzik from Princess Bride, despite the fact that like Andre the Giant was like a foot and 2 inches taller than me.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, I'm 6'1". I'm tall for like normal people,
Yeah.
but like, but no,
Is that a compliment? I
it's
mean,
the
he's
it's
a
the
great character.
sideburns and my curl fro,
Yeah.
honestly. And I'm
There
just
you
like,
go.
well, I guess I kind of see it. I did dress up
Yeah.
as Fezzik for a
Huh.
costume one time, and it was, he's so much fun. And Prince
Yeah.
Bride's so wonderful. Like, I honestly think that would be an amazing pick to show somebody. It's just like
Yeah.
so delightful. It's
That's
so,
what I mean. I think it depends on the person. If it's someone
yeah.
who's maybe a bit more like technical and like cynical and that sort of thing, I'd show them Interstellar. If it's someone who's like a big reader and is more like whimsical and optimistic, I'd show them Princess Bride.
I'm not a witch, I'm your wife.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Inconceivable. Oh, such a good movie.
Yeah,
It is just, it's so tight. It's so
Wallace
tight.
Shawn playing a
Yeah.
Sicilian.
I in literally no way. He just is Sicilian. He just is Sicilian. Nothing about him is Sicilian except for the fact that he just is Sicilian. Like
Yeah,
that's
absolutely nothing. Now, I know there's a lot of discourse in terms of
hmm
hatred for sequels and the
mm,
call for original films.
hmm
But Alice, if there was one film that you wish would get a sequel, what would it be?
hmm Stardust. I think that yeah, because there's a few of these where I'm like, I there needs to be the lore there for me to want to explore
Yeah.
more. And I think Stardust, there's so much that you could continue. It doesn't even need to be the same characters. Like I
Yeah.
think that the actual world of Wall, and it could be like 150 years later, when they've gone on to be stars or something, and maybe it's like their children, or
Mhm.
maybe it's like another witch or something. I just think that it's so rich in its lore and its world building. I think that you could do a really great sequel. So yeah.
Yeah. Matthew Vaughn directed it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And
It's so watch
yeah,
that, then watch Kingsman. Just like,
I feel like,
and then watch Kick-Ass and just
well,
be
they
like,
certainly have like a morbid sense of humor about them.
yeah,
Obviously, Stardust is a lot less violent.
yeah.
Um, but I just feel like Neil Gaiman has so
Oh,
much to explore with his work,
yes.
and why, like, I was so happy Good Omens got a second season, and
And
which,
it's so good.
by the
It's I
way,
think it's better than the first season too.
by the way, I
Yes.
was emotionally devastated
Oh
by
yeah,
the
that's
end of
right. You
that
hadn't seen
season.
it yet. Yes. Oh yes. Isn't
Oh
it
my God.
just
Oh yeah, because I hadn't watched it yet when we
yeah,
did
you
our
hadn't watched-
show with Mike.
yeah. I told you. I told you. It's so good, and then it just crushes you into a pulp.
I was so sad.
Yeah,
So
I
sad.
know. It's
But no,
okay. There's a third season when the
yes,
strikes are over. There will be a third season.
if they don't get together, I'm going to be so sad. But
I think
I,
I think they will. I think we're okay. I
I
don't see
feel
a
like
world where it doesn't.
it's just Neil Gaiman knows how to create such
Yes.
interesting spaces. I
Oh my
love
God,
that.
it's the same with American Gods. Like it's so interesting. And I think the
So
show
much stuff
the
to
show would like
explore.
adapted it as best as it could because it's just so bizarre. It's just like now we're going to spend 300 pages in a town in the middle of nowhere where oh look one of the like creatures of mythology has been murdering children for 35 years. It's so random.
Yep.
And so when they adapted it, I enjoyed the show and everything, but it is so bizarre to try and adapt. But I think Stardust is probably his like most straightforward like,
And
story, and I would love it if
there's,
Neil Gaiman wrote it
yeah.
too.
And there are so many young, talented people in that
Who are
movie.
now huge.
Like,
Henry Cavill, you've
Charlie
got
Cox
Charlie
is the main
Cox.
character in it. It's just like, what?
And then he did nothing for a while and then was Daredevil. I mean, again, Henry Cavill's just like the annoying like guy
Yeah.
who's he's just kind of what's the word for it, the foe, not the foe, the foil
Yeah.
to Charlie Cox's character. But then you've also it's a very stacked cast. Like you got
All,
Michelle
all,
Pfeiffer,
all the
Robert De Niro,
brothers.
yeah,
Like
all the brothers. Yes, yes,
you just have like Jason
yes.
Fleming and Mark
Yep,
Strong,
Mark
and
Strong. Yep,
just
it's
it's such a great
crazy.
cast. I would love to see more Stardust.
Yeah,
Now, Alice, what's a film that you haven't watched since childhood that you'd
yeah.
most want to go back and rewatch?
This was an interesting question because there's a lot that I have recently, not recently, but like in in the last 10 years, I did go back and rewatch them. Some were better than others. Like The
Yeah.
Page Master was not very good.
Oh,
Never Ending Story was just as weird as it's always been. But one I was obsessed with this film and I just haven't, I really want to go back and watch it, is Dinosaur, the one from like 2000 or
yeah.
something.
Where Disney's like
I
3D animation people.
weird monkey things and dinosaurs. I genuinely remember so little about the
Mhm.
movie, but I remember so much of it, if that makes sense. Like I remember the feeling of watching it. I remember visuals. I don't really remember what it's about. Obviously, dinosaurs and lemur things. I don't
Mhm.
really remember what they are.
Yeah,
But I'm like, I should go back and watch it. I feel like it would unlock some core memories.
that's one I haven't watched in 20 years, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest. It's funny
Yeah.
because I've been reflecting upon this too, and like so many Don Bluth films from when I was like growing up
Mm.
as a kid, and
Yes,
then
yes. Another one for me was Troll in Central Park. I went what
yes,
back.
I
Yeah.
was just talking about that with my friend Haley when I was interviewing for this. I used to get that from Wow Video so
Yeah.
much, and I
Yeah.
have legitimately not watched that since I was a kid. But the one that keeps popping in my head is "We're Back," a
Ugh.
dinosaur story. So more dinosaurs.
More dinosaurs. There was a lot like between this and that and
Land
Land
Before
Before
Time.
Time.
Yep.
Like and then there was
Dinosaurs
that
the show.
show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was
I
basically like the Flintstones, except like dinosaurs.
dinosaurs. Yeah,
Yeah.
they just went back a step instead of
Yes.
it being cavemen, it was dinosaurs. Yeah, that was it. Was like there was a big time for dinosaurs. We don't really
Oh,
do anything with dinosaurs anymore, except for like David Attenborough's documentary or something.
yeah.
We should have more dinosaurs. Bring back
Bring
dinosaurs.
back dinosaurs. And then everyone's like, ugh, good dinosaur. Uh,
Yeah, I like that. I don't mind that movie. I think it's. I
me
mean, it's still.
too.
Yeah,
I appreciate the camaraderie today.
yeah, it's
I'm
good.
like, it's weird, it's out there, but
Yeah,
like I have fun with that movie. It's nuts.
yeah,
Like
yeah. It's
the kid and
you
the
know.
dinosaur get high, and then you have Sam Elliott as a rancher T-Rex who's like,
T-Rex,
and
yeah.
I smothered that gator in its own blood. I'm like,
Yeah, that's really tough.
I'm like, I'm just sitting there like, this isn't for kids, but I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also like beautiful. Like the
Yeah,
animation, the water and the landscapes, you're just like, oh my God. Yeah.
it is Pixar, so there you go.
Yes, that's true. That is true.
Now, it's funny because I feel like a lot of people, their answer to number five is going down to like near you in New Zealand and wanting to go see real Middle Earth,
Yeah.
including a friend of mine who would love to get married there. And I'm like,
Oh,
God,
they do, but it's expensive. When we went to New Zealand, we did obviously all the Lord of the Rings stuff. And somebody asked on our Hobbiton tour, they're like, "Oh, can you get married here?" And they're like, "Yeah, you can." I think packages start at like 20,000. And I was like, okay.
what you know what's
They,
funny is
yeah.
that that's cheap for American
No,
wedding.
no, but they start at 20. Whenever they say they
Yeah, so do
start,
a lot of
yeah.
people spend way too
Yes.
much money getting married here. Like
Yeah.
way
I
too
mean,
much money.
same here. Same here. It's crazy. It is
But
crazy.
the actual
Yeah.
question is, if you
Yes.
could visit anywhere, any place from a movie, where would it be?
Hogwarts, obviously. Like, that's the correct answer. Maybe not even Hogwarts, maybe like Hogsmeade, just because I'm less likely to die than you know all the shenanigans that I'd still go to Hogwarts. I don't care. I don't care if I die. I'd go in the Forbidden Forest. I'd go to Hogsmeade. I'd go on the train. I'd go to class. I'd be so excited to go to class. Are you kidding me? Doing potions? Come on. Learning
What
astronomy
would be
in
your
that
favorite
way?
class to go to?
I think, look, I actually think magical creatures would be really cool.
Yep.
And then I mean, Defense Against the Dark Arts would be the fun. Like, it'd be the most fun because
Yeah.
you actually get to cast all these spells. And so I think it'd be those two would be the ones. I'd end up being like an aura, but like that specializes in like defense creatures or something.
I would 100% be Newt's colleague, because I
Yeah.
definitely would be a magizoologist. That's like
Yeah, it'd be
would be
so
right up my
cool.
alley.
I
Now,
know. Can
I
you
have to
imagine?
ask, I'm
Yeah.
assuming you have done some kind of test to figure out what house you
Oh,
are.
yes, I'm a Gryffindor through and through. I know that that's such a like I'm a Gryffindor, but no, I've done the Pottermore quiz.
Yeah.
I'm a Gryffindor. My partner, he's a Slytherin. It's very funny, and he really is a Slytherin. So it just goes to show it can work.
It was funny because I wasn't expecting to get Gryffindor, but I did,
Oh, nice, nice,
because
nice.
I was really expecting to get Ravenclaw.
Yeah,
But I didn't. So
yeah.
what happened? Sorting Hat
Maybe
was
you're
like,
like
nope.
Hermione. Yeah, you're like Hermione. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess. Because I guess the intellectual like kind of
Yeah,
thing, like I work at a school.
yeah.
So, but like, Gryffindor's great. Everybody
Yeah.
loves Gryffindor.
Well, it's funny because everybody loves Gryffindor, but everybody hates Gryffindor. Like all Gryffindors
Well,
love
all the
Gryffindor, and the
fans love
public.
Gryffindor. I'm sure
Yeah,
everybody else in the like in world are just like, ugh.
yeah.
They keep getting all these points because they're
I
so biased. It's
know.
like,
Well, what do you want? We're leaders, man. That's literally part of it.
there you go. Gonna pull that sword.
Yeah.
Now, Alice, what's a film that you watched way too young?
So I have two for very
Okay.
different reasons. One of them is Labyrinth because I think I was 5 the first time I saw that. And that wasn't like I just remember having nightmares about the very first one of the very first scenes when all the goblins are like when it cuts to all the goblins and they're all like called up together. That bit freaked me out as a child. But that wasn't so bad. The one I actually shouldn't have watched, I was 10 and I watched Scary Movie 3 with my dad because I was like, oh yeah, funny comedy, right? Because it was in the comedy section of the
Yeah.
rental store. And then I watched it with my dad and I didn't sleep alone for the next like 3 months. I
Is
was
that
like,
the
because I had
one?
that's the one with the ring. That's the ring one.
Yeah. And does it
Yeah.
have Michael Jackson, the others?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And but the bit that freaked me out was the ring girl because I had a TV in my bedroom at the time. And when I went, because I was staying at my dad's, and that night I remember being in the bedroom and just look at, I didn't even have one in my bedroom at my dad's. It was just the corner. I was like, she's going to crawl out of the TV and kill me. She's going to crawl. And so I went and slept
It's
with my,
legitimately
my dad.
creepy
Yeah.
until she starts like falling and like getting in like
Yeah.
a boxing fight. And
Well,
like,
that's what I mean. Like, as an adult, I can watch it, obviously, and it's fine. But a
yeah.
10-year-old, I'm just watching like I'm gonna get murdered by the little girl that lives in my in my
Yeah.
TV.
I distinctly remember watching a Scary Movie 2 a lot on
Yeah.
Comedy Central.
Yeah.
And it's like, take my strong hand.
Yeah.
And they replicate the whole uh Marlon Wayans of like
Yeah.
cutting open his head and trying to feed him his brain. It's like, this is your brain on crack.
Yeah. I
That
just
whole
always from
thing.
Scary Movie 3, I always remember the bit where the guy's like playing Yahtzee because he's knocked down. She's like, what happened? He's like, I don't know. I was just, playing Yahtzee and I looked down, I was like, Yahtzee, and like smacks his and then knocks himself out again.
I feel like once they introduced Leslie Nielsen into the
Yeah.
series, it really was like silly.
Yeah.
And well, that's
Yeah.
how they beat the girl from the ring. He
Yeah.
opens the door, is like, just want to let you know, we're all counting on you. Just like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. So, but
Yeah.
the first thing that popped in my head when you said Labyrinth was like, yep, 5 years old is too young to be seeing David Bowie's bulge like that.
It's all right. You don't understand. You're like, oh, those are weird pants.
And as an adult,
When
you're
you're
just like,
5.
I'm confused. Um,
Yeah. As an adult, you're like, really? No one? That
I'm
like
like,
Jennifer
it's,
Connelly's 15. Did everyone forget that she's 15?
and then it's just like, I feel like that movie probably had a lot of people start questioning. And just like, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to feel about David Bowie in this moment.
Well, I mean, it's a huge part of both me and my partner's life. So Toby, like he's named after the character in the like the little
There
brother.
you go.
And I mean, right here, because I'm in his study right now, we've got all these little miniatures from Weta that they've
Oh my
made.
God,
So
there
we've
he
got a
is.
Jared, we've got a Sarah, and of course, the best character, we have a Ludo.
Yeah.
And then as an I think it was maybe a birthday present or an anniversary present or something. I got him
Oh, nice.
a Ludo stuffed toy because it was too cute and I had to. So it's a very important part of our lives and
There
it
you go.
affected us. And it was one of the first things we connected on when we met. And I mean, he
Yeah.
wasn't allowed to not like the movie when he's literally named after it. I'm just glad his mum didn't call him Jareth. I feel like that would have been a
Well,
step too
as
far.
somebody who's also named after a movie,
Are
I
you named after Shane?
yes,
Like the movie Shane?
yeah. So
Well, there you go. I hope you
indeed,
like it.
I had a baseball coach buy me the movie because I had never actually watched it. And watching it, it's like it's actually a fantastic Western that's a lot more complex than you think it is. And
Yeah.
then you realize, oh, wait a minute, Shane's in Logan. And then my life, I had
Yeah.
an existential crisis sitting in the theater watching Logan, just being like, my life is coming full circle now.
Yeah.
I had my mutton chops and everything. I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's all meant to be.
it's all meant to be. Um, Now, this is one of the big thinker questions that I've come up with.
Mm.
What's a film experience that you feel like legitimately made an impact on your life?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because there's so many different ones. I think though I'm going to go with the first time I ever went to a midnight screening, which was for the very last Harry Potter movie. And we dressed up. I was Hermione, of course. And then,
Nice.
my mum went as Mrs. Weasley, and I had a bunch of friends. We all dressed up as the characters. And I think from memory, it was my first time being in a movie theater where people were reacting to
Mhm.
what was happening. Because, previously it had been very like you sit, you watch the movie, you
Yeah.
go on. But then with being in that, and, especially the bit where like you have the bit where Mrs. Weasley's like, not my daughter, and she kills Bellatrix, and the bit where I still remember to this day when Voldemort dies, because in the book it's so, sudden and he just falls and it's like a moment. But because in the movie they did this like weird ash thing, I
Just
still
like,
remember being in the theater and everyone's like, whoop, like they'd been clapping at all the bad guys' deaths, and it was just like, whoop, oh, okay, this is
it's
still
still
going.
going.
Okay. Yeah, but I just remember being in there and experiencing, I think as well, because like there's a reason Harry Potter is so often my answer to the
Yeah.
questions, because it really did define, I think, like our generation. It was such an influence to like not both literature and film and just culturally. And I mean, yes, obviously since in the last few years it's been a bit marred by thanks JK, but like removing that, I think it's one of those things that's taken on a life of its own,
Mhm.
and it really has become very culturally definitive, especially for our generation, because of what it presented, and because we literally watched Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, Tom Felton. We watched them grow up over
Yeah.
10 years, and it is crazy that they managed to make 8 films that are all good to amazing.
Yeah.
Like there is no, bad Harry Potter film. Like Fantastic Beasts, we don't talk about that, but the Harry Potters, you know,
They got greedy.
the Yeah. Well, this is what I mean. It's like on their own, you can watch all of them over and over again, and they have aged relatively well, minus like especially in the first movie, some of the CG.
Mhm.
But and then getting to this moment, having watched it from 2000, 2001, getting to 2011 when the
Yeah.
final one came out, and you went from a 5-year-old to an 18-year-old in my case. It's just such a, crazy experience to grow up and then age out essentially with these characters and or 17-year-old. Yeah, it was such an experience, and I'll always remember it. And it's why, it's why I'm always going to be a Harry Potter person. It's just such a big part of my life.
Well, I started reading the books when I found out that
Mm.
the first movie was coming out, and then
Mm-hmm.
I went out every morning,
Mm-hmm.
get that book when that came
Yep.
out, finished it in two
Yep.
days,
Yeah.
and just couldn't stop reading. And I was 10 when
Mm.
Sorcerer's Stone came out, and it was the summer after my freshman year of college
Mm.
when Deathly Hallows Part 2 came out. I was also pretty disappointed because they used to come out for my birthday in November. I would go every
And then they
year.
moved it
And
up.
then they're
Yeah.
like, we can make more money in the summer. And I'm like, screw
Yeah.
you. Um, and sitting there watching, like, I legitimately can't hear the word always
Yeah. Yeah.
without legitimately thinking about that. And also getting
Always.
emotional.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that's probably one of my most frequently used gifts to send my
Yes, I use it all the time.
yeah.
Yeah. I always do that in response when people are like, oh, you should. It's like, always. I have
And
this gift too.
that was one of the first moments I ever got truly emotional in the theater. I
Yeah.
was God, Snape's whole memories, and
Oh,
you're just
Alan
like,
Rickman. I
just
just the
rip it out.
casting, the casting of these films is. But what I love is that every time I go back and watch it, because I actually think that the first one, I think Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone, depending on where you're from,
Yeah.
I think that it is. It was maybe like, if not my first, one of my very first films I ever saw in a cinema.
Mhm.
So it was, a very big moment. But it's like, going back and rewatching it over the years, like when I remember when Order of the Phoenix came out, I watched it, I liked it, it was fine. And now as I've grown to really appreciate it, especially how good Daniel Radcliffe is in the scene where Sirius dies. And you're just like, that is just trauma and grief and everything personified. And then you have the most badass duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort. Like, it's so good. And then, yeah, I think I remember with the Snape scene, I remember being really nervous about it because it's so powerful
Yeah.
in the books. It's so like, especially because at the time I remember reading it and in the book and being like, what? Like, just not expecting
Yeah.
it at all. And then I was like, oh, what are they going to do? How are they going to do it in the movies? And it was perfect. Like, it was just so emotional. Oh, I love those movies. Now I want to watch them.
There you go. You are gonna have a Harry Potter movie marathon
Yeah,
very
I'm going
shortly.
to. I'm
Now,
sure.
this is actually an interesting one because since I'm pretty
Mm.
sure Harry Potter's getting turned into a series.
Ugh, it's too soon. It's too soon. I genuinely think I've always been like, oh, they should, but in when like Daniel Radcliffe is old enough to play Dumbledore, that's the age, that is the time in which you can redo it. It's only been 25 years since the first one. That's not that much time to redo it all over again. Like the
Well, in a
movies are
world
still watchable.
where we've had 3 Spider-Man reboots in that time,
Yeah,
and how many Batman,
I know. I
it's just
know.
like
I
Warner
know.
Brothers is just like, we need the
But
money.
like, I saw that they're adapting, I think, the Hogwarts Legacy games. That is a better thing to focus on right now. Do that. There are so many things that fans have been begging for. Not Fantastic Beasts. People have been like, make a Marauders show, make a Founders show. Like, those are the stories we actually want to see. Don't just redo what we already have. Anyway, so that's not my answer.
Yep.
Anyway, so
But the question is, what's a movie
yes.
that you would like to see turned into a TV show?
So this one was actually difficult because of the fact that so many are being turned into TV shows, or if they
Yeah.
haven't, they're like spinning off. Now, going back to a previous answer, I actually think Labyrinth would make a really great TV show. I
Coming
think
to Disney
Dark
Plus.
Crystal, yeah, honestly, like, but I'm not even saying make the movie a TV show. I'm
Yeah.
saying like there's two separate pieces of media that have come out that you could make stories on. One is Jareth's like origin story. There's a series of comics. And then the other one is actually there's a manga based on Toby after he's like grown up. And then his like he goes back into the world of Labyrinth and he has his own adventures. I think those are really interesting stories. I think you don't have, the Goblin King was like defeated question mark at the end of Labyrinth. So you either do the prequel and you have like a younger version so that you don't reanimate David Bowie, like leave him. But I think the reason Dark Crystal didn't quite work is that it's too dark. It literally, like the story doesn't have too much hope in it because how a prequel is going to end. It's going to end in the death of everyone because the way the movie starts is everyone's dead except for these two. It's depression
For the record,
personified.
I absolutely loved that Dark Crystal show on Netflix, and I'm so
Yeah.
mad they're like, nope.
That's the thing. I loved it. I did too. I think it was so well made, but I just the whole time I was like, this is going to be the most depressing show end
Maybe
unless they just
realize
do
that
the movie
after, and they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, well, I was thinking either the last season would just be the movie remade. I think that's the only way it could have worked, but it's not going to work anyway because it got cancelled. So you just just sad. You just have a sad
Send it to
season
Disney
of
Plus
television.
and bring all the Muppets home.
Exactly. But I think that Labyrinth is a lot more whimsical. I think that there's so much you can explore in the like actual labyrinth and outside of it and all the creatures and everything. Like it'd be so fun. And if I have some more Sir Didymus and Ambrosius, I'm gonna be happy.
I have an interesting question. Who would be the Goblin King? Like,
well, it's either has to be, actually who would be pretty good, I reckon, based on looks. The guy who's about to play Snow in the Ballad for Song and Snakes, the not Harry Potter, the Hunger Games prequel. What's his name? Because he has that like, I want to say off-kilter look about him, which is probably why he was cast as President Snow. What's his name? His name is here he is, Tom Blythe. So he was in the Billy the Kid series, The Gilded Age. He hasn't been in a lot, but let me just show you what he looks like in the upcoming movie. Like,
I can see it.
You can see it. Like, I mean, I'll have to see
if
he's
you're
any good in this prequel.
I would totally go like Neil Patrick Harris. I think that would be
he'd be good. Yeah.
He certainly would have a lot of fun.
Well, he was a great Olaf in the series of Unfortunate Event adaptation. And I say that as someone who really likes the Jim Carrey movie. Yeah. Even though it's 3 books in one, I still love that movie so much.
Yeah, they're like, what if we make each of these books 20 minutes?
Yeah. To be fair, you can do that with those books. Like, having read all of them, they were all literally just like shenanigans ensue for over 200 pages.
Which I do have to say, on a quick side note, Patrick Warburton is Lemony Snicket.
Oh,
so good.
It was so good. That was a really good show. It was a great adaptation, actually. It was very true to the books.
But I could definitely see him as Jarek. I think that would be a lot of fun. And you know what? I'm actually surprised Disney Plus hasn't announced a Labyrinth spinoff at this point.
Give it some time.
Anything that has anything remotely looks like a Muppet is going to have a show on Disney Plus at some point.
Well, it should. I think that like we need more puppets. Which is a weird thing to say, but I miss more puppets. One of my favorite Christmas movies of all time is The Muppets Christmas Carol. Like, it's perfect.
I watch it every single Christmas season.
Me too. It is a non-negotiable. That Grinch, It's a Wonderful Life are my non-negotiables
Yeah.
for Christmas because they're perfect.
I have a monthly movie marathon with my friends, and I had
Yep.
a musical movie marathon that, like, I have a Google form and everything. Everybody votes.
Yeah.
It turned into a mostly Muppet movie musical marathon, which
They do have
included
some excellent
3 Muppet
songs.
movies, Labyrinth, and Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz, which is why it was
Oh,
mostly Muppet movie.
mostly. Oh, so
Yeah,
close.
so close. Now, Alice, what's your favorite film romance?
This one was so hard because a lot of the romances that I am obsessed and love are TV ones.
Shows.
So I was like, oh, movies. So it's actually funny. Toby reminded me of one that he's like, you really like this. I'm like, I do really like this. And that is When Harry Met Sally, because it's a perfect romantic comedy. It is such a beautiful like love story and the like little in stories in between.
Yeah.
It's such a good, that and Princess Bride. They're just such well-made stories. I'm just relating the two because
As
obviously they're both Rob
you
Reiner.
wish.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like When Harry Met Sally, the romance between Harry and Sally, I can't believe it's under 90 minutes. So much happens in that movie.
Yeah.
But then you also have that really great like B plot with, Carrie Fisher and her
Bruno
husband,
Kirby.
her husband to be. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that. There is such a cute love story as well within it. It's so good. I really like that movie. It's very well. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely do so.
As a man, the scenes with Billy Crystal and Bruno Kirby talking about relationships, doing the most random stuff is so relatable. Like them just like mindlessly doing the wave at a sporting event, and then the batting cages.
Yeah.
I talk about the sex I have. Like, you what?
Yeah.
It's like so dumbfounded by it. Bruno
Yeah, or
Kirby,
the bit where they're watching
underappreciated actor of the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bit where they're just like where Harry and Sally are on the phone watching Casablanca together.
Yeah.
Such a nice scene. But I really relate to Sally with how she orders food because I do something similar. I like it how I like it. Like when literally the other day we went out for breakfast and I really don't like it when you order, whether it's an eggs Benedict or pancakes or whatever, and it comes with everything on the actual, eggs Benedict or pancakes or whatever it is. So I always ask for all the things to be on the side because I don't want it to be smothered. I want to put it how I want to put it. And I always just feel like her where I'm like, I'll have all of that on the side. Yeah.
I'm such a creature of habit that it takes me literally 5 seconds to order at any place that I go to. So I do have a friend. I love you, Bobby. He'll be like, what would you suggest? And like everywhere we go, and I'm just like, what are they gonna say? How's this waiter gonna respond to this? Because I know it's gonna happen. And it's one of those kinds of things. But I do love that moment at the end. It's like, I love the fact that it takes you 2 hours to and like all those moments, and like they go on such an interesting journey.
I know.
Together in that, and like how it starts is so random. Like you're in the car with your girlfriend's best friend.
I know.
Like a long time. Like that was a long drive he went on.
I know. But that's what I mean. It's such a journey, but it's also 87 minutes.
Yeah.
Like
it's
they just don't make movies like that anymore. I love that movie so much.
I love Rob Reiner. He made some amazing films, which how many we talked about, at least a couple today. It's one of those things where I did that for my movie club that I do once a month with some of my friends, and just the questions, like the conversations you can have. It's like, can you tell a female friend that they're attractive and that not be and like having that conversation, and like I had some interesting conversations. I literally just rewatched this like a week or two ago, so it's like having these
very
conversations
fresh in the
with
mind.
my wife, and I'm like, So, Jess, what are your thoughts on this? And so, but my last question for you. So, Alice, you have been hired to teach a film class. What would be your curriculum?
This was oh my god. I remember because I was doing these this morning before we logged on, and I was like, oh yeah, la 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 la. And then I was like, this is such an expansive question. Why did I leave it so late? Because I think there's a few ways you can do it. Now, my initial thinking was because one of my favorite classes that I ever took in film, because I did film school,
Yeah.
one of my favorite classes was one of the ones, it was basically, I was called like from genre to something. But basically, it was every single week we would focus on a genre and we would watch a film that was like the preeminent example of it. So we watched Shane for westerns, we watched Silence of the Lambs for horror, like, and it was really, really great because it really expanded like my thinking of film. I think for crime we did Drive, like it was so interesting. So that was my initial thinking. But then I was like, no, I think I'll do something a little bit more interesting. And well, I think if this is my very first film class, I think I would start with these and then every year I would change it. And maybe I'd do like an alternate where it's like one year I'd do the genre thing and then this year I'm doing this. So I would start with what could be considered the best movie of all time according to IMDb, which is Shawshank. And that would be an example of prestige filmmaking at its like pinnacle. But it would be, I think it would be really great to teach students, you know, how storytelling can be epic in a really non-epic way. Like it doesn't have to be about war and like all that sort of, you know, violence, but it can take and then talk about the phenomena of how it didn't do well in theaters, but now it's like just considered the greatest film of all time. I think it'd be a really interesting conversation to start the class on. And then I would go into, okay, that's pretty like standard storytelling. Why don't we look at some alternative ways of telling stories? And I would use Inception and Christopher Nolan as like a way of, you know, not typically like it would, you know, you could do also Memento, Dunkirk. There's a bajillion of his films you could do, but I picked Inception because I think it would be for a week 2 film. It'd be a good way. And if they haven't seen it, they should. But also because I remember the first time I saw it, I remember being like, whoa. And it's so intriguing and intellectual, but so well done as well. And then I would go into this idea of the epic as well. I think that's, and, you know, kind of films that defined generations and films that defined like eras. This idea of era filmmaking, and I would go with The Godfather purely as well because of the story behind the making of it. I would also, I think it's such an interesting exploration and adaptation as well. But really, again, this idea of like epic storytelling, but without it, you know, being like Lawrence of Arabia or something like that. And I think, again, it's pretty important. There are some films which are, I will say, spoiler alert, Citizen Kane is not on my list because I think it's over talked about and it's overrated in my opinion. But anyway, I had to study it in school and I was so bored. Then I would go into the idea of the indie, because I think after all these big ones, it's important to also explore that you don't need all this money and all this studio prestige behind it to make a great film. And that would be Everything Everywhere, of course, because I think that's such a good film to explore. I think that will be talked about for decades. There's just so much. And it was made on so little budget. So little budget. And so I think it's to show it's like money does not equal quality. I think that's a really important thing to show to students.
Well,
then I would go into
with like the fact that within, I know COVID kind of caused a time warp, but like 2019 you had Parasite. 2022 you had Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, Best Picture winners can be something so different and so bold. And like it made me so happy. Like my favorite film last year wasn't Everything Everywhere All at Once. Still absolutely love Banshees of Inisherin, but Everything Everywhere I feel like needed to win Best Picture because
there's just so many levels to it. And I think like with what you were saying before about like people being more accepting of the weird, I think that's why I have always loved filmmaking is because it is the way to push forward storytelling and content consumption in a way that will affect most of the public. Because yes, you can do that with books and stuff too, but less people read. It's just the truth of it. More people are more likely to watch a movie, and it is undeniable with how much influence movies and TV has on society. And so the way in which you can broaden the mind of people and explore themes and experimental filmmaking, and not in really boring art house ways where it's like, it's experimental. Here's a woman who's peeled potatoes for 9 hours, the film. And I'm like, of course no one is watching this. So, which is a real film, by the way. But like that, I think it's such a great example of like, you can go weird. You can have, the language can be all over the place. It can be English, it can be Chinese. That doesn't matter. I think as well. And actually something that I didn't even think about was foreign language films. That would be, if I had another one, I would have put like that in. But that's a whole other thing to explore, where it is just about how can we tell this story in the way that best serves it, and how can we break the rules if we need to. And I think Everything Everywhere is such a great example of that.
Absolutely.
So that one. Then I would go into, because it's film, it's important about marketing. And I think it's really interesting to see, for example, when I was in school, I think I got taught about Lost 4 times in my years at uni, like because of the crazy strategy behind its marketing and blah blah blah. So for this one I would use, and this is the most recent example on my list, but it would have to be Barbie, because the phenomena of Barbenheimer, but it's also the Barbie marketing was genius. I think there's the Barbenheimer element to it, where normally 2 films that come out on the same day, there would be all this competition, but there's such a cohesiveness to how the marketing strategy worked, that they fed off each other. And they were really similar in a lot of ways, but obviously very different in others. And I think everyone jumped on the Barbie wave. I don't even know how much the marketing team did it, or how much everyone was just like, Barbie theme this, Barbie theme that. And I think as well, it's a great way of showing you can do things that are big budget and like big names and blah, 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 but then also tell really, really important, interesting, and personal stories within that. Like, just because it's big doesn't mean it needs to be shallow. And I think that that's such an interesting film to explore that. So that, then I think it's very important that you look at race theory, critical race theory, race relations, ethnicities, and of course I have to go with Do the Right Thing in the club. I think that it's such an important film to watch, just as well as to expose people to Spike Lee if they haven't seen him before. And I think Do the Right Thing is so interesting because of the world we live in right now.
Everybody does the wrong thing. So
yeah, exactly. But this idea of like tensions between cultural groups and ethnicities, there's like Italians in it, there's obviously Black people, there's Irish people, like there's all the types of cultures and the tensions, and this kind of like, this is what happens when everything goes wrong, the movie. But it's so good. Like, it's such a good movie, and it's so important, and it's so well told. And I just think it's important to, expose people to this type of filmmaking so that they can watch films with that sort of eye as well, and look at, obviously we talk about a lot of other films in that as well. And then I would look into genre breaking. So similar to Everything Everywhere, I think there's an idea where it's like, for example, if it's a superhero movie, it won't win the Oscar, right? So one of the preeminent examples of this is Silence of the Lambs, because it's a horror movie, and horror movies never win awards. And, it cracked so many, like, it broke so many rules, and was one of the first ones to do that, because of just the fact that it was a horror movie. It was meant to be like a, pulpy, like, horror type crime thriller thing, but it was so good.
Nobody told Jonathan Demme that.
Or Anthony Hopkins, or Jodie Foster. Nobody told them the movie they were in. and it's funny because like everything about it. Even I remember as a kid seeing it in the rental store being like, oh, that looks like a horror, it looks like a horror movie, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, no, it's actually one of the greatest films of all time. It just so happens to be horror. And I think this idea of like, just because something's genre or just because something's a superhero movie or whatever, doesn't mean it can't also just be a really good movie. Like,
Yeah.
I think this idea of if it's mainstream and popular, it's bad is such a damaging thing in film discourse. And having gone to film school and had to constantly have arguments with other students in the class because the fact that I liked mainstream film, or like when we would talk about it, it's like, oh, it's so populist. It's like, well, just because everyone likes it doesn't mean it's bad. And so I think that's an
Yeah, go
interesting
go ask
conversation
Steven
to have.
Spielberg, who's
Well,
made
yeah,
some of the greatest
exactly.
films of all time, and
Yeah,
is a populist filmmaker who's also an incredible auteur filmmaker. It's just like I feel like
exactly.
the biggest example that I was bringing up was Jurassic Park. Like Jurassic
Yeah,
Park is
yeah,
so genre movie,
yes.
but it has so much to say. And
Yeah,
Jeff Goldblum literally has so much to say.
literally in the film.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm going to be writing an article for guyatthemovies.com about why I feel like we need to rethink film criticism, because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of things that are harmful to film at this point. Get to talk about Rotten Tomatoes, which
Yes.
that's always fun. And
Yeah.
or even just
Right.
like
I've always had a problem with Rotten Tomatoes because I'm just like, the way it works, where it's like 99% fresh score, and then you go on and it's like 6.6 or something. And I'm like, well, that's so
everybody
misleading.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Everybody thought it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, that's so
And
misleading because
well,
people
and
don't take that.
well, and that point exactly of like, stop putting expectations and labels on films before you watch them.
Yes.
Like you need to
Yes.
walk into I try real hard to not. I don't even look up synopses anymore. Like half
Mm-hmm.
the movies I watch, I have no idea what the hell I'm going to watch, and
Yeah.
it makes it so much better because I'm just sitting there without any baggage, just watching a film,
Yeah.
and you judge it based off of what it is, not what you want it to be, or think it should be, or think it's going to be. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just such a big thing at this point. So I do appreciate that. And Silence of the Lambs did so well for itself. And yet we're still struggling with things like
Yeah.
why a single actress who absolutely kills it in a horror movie can't get nominated for Best Actress. Just ask Toni Collette, Lupita Nyong'o,
Elizabeth Moss.
all Elizabeth Moss from The Invisible Man, like all of
Yeah.
these things. It's just like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And it's just something that I think will break more as the academy and that is diversified
Yes.
in both like ethnicity and age.
Yeah.
But it is just something that I do think people think, oh, boring and slow equals good. And I agree. Like I went in to Talk to Me. I knew nothing about it. Or we literally just went to see because I was like, oh, I've heard that this is good. We should go. I hadn't even seen a trailer because I just like, was like, oh, whatever, I haven't seen it. Let's go in. And that was a great film experience. And that is such a good movie. That's actually a really good example of a modern version of Silence of the Lambs where it is, and I mean, Get Out is another one where it's like, it's a great horror film. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep after having seen Talk to Me. I was terrified. But then it's a great film. Like the
Yes.
the themes and the way in which it plays with expectation and character and story and metaphor is insane. Like, and I mean, even flipping over to superhero films, like Infinity War is excellent. Like, it's just an
Mm.
excellent film. Black Panther is a fantastic film. It just so happens to be about a superhero.
Yeah.
And that's just something we need to learn to get over. Why is it that the Dark Knight was like treated with respect because it came from Nolan and it was done, or Joker, but
Mm.
then if it's too flashy, therefore it's not allowed. But even then, the Dark Knight didn't get what it should have gotten. Or more recent example, the fact that Empire of Light was nominated for cinematography over the Batman. Like even Roger Deakins was like, "Why did you nominate me?" He didn't attend the Oscars
I
because he was
love
like, "Why am I
Deakins.
here?"
I love
Yeah,
my Deakins. I'm a
yeah,
Coen Brothers fan through and through, but like, come on
yeah,
now.
yeah. It's Pretty
Well, and
Sunsets, but come
not
on,
only
people, did you
that,
watch the Batman?
but one of the composers said, "Why the hell did Michael Giacchino not get nominated for the Batman
Yeah,
too?" Just like,
yeah,
also, side
because
note,
it's a superhero movie.
I knew so little about Talk to Me that when they
Yeah.
start speaking in Australian accents, I'm like, is this movie Australian? Because
I
knew
I was the
nothing.
same. I didn't know it was an Australian movie. I knew it was made by Australians, but I thought it was going to be like made by Australians in
Yeah,
America sort of thing. And then they started speaking. I was like,
like Peter
is that
Weir
my
making a movie about Amish people. Like,
yeah,
yeah, he's Australian, but
yeah,
this definitely isn't.
yeah, exactly. Like, and but you know why I also really love, just to sidetrack a little bit more for a sec, reason I really love that movie is that it is exactly what I've been screaming about for years, that we as a country in Australia, we need to do more, because we often approve, and the films that get made are really like Australiana, like, oh, Outback, Australia, blah, blah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm so sick. No one in Australia likes those movies. I want people to understand that. We don't want these films. We want films like Talk to Me that are really great films that just so happen to be set in Australia. That's what we like. You don't need it to be about the country every time. And Talk to Me proves that. It just so happens to be set in Australia, in Adelaide of all places, which is a very like no one lives there. Like
Yeah.
nothing ever happens there except for apparently possessions and stuff.
Yeah.
But
I think it
yes.
was The Dry that I watched. I came
Mm-hmm.
I liked that a lot. But like
That's it. That's an all right film, but again, it's so like Australia, and I'm just
it's
so
like
sick of it.
legitimately trying to think of how many Australian films that I've watched that are like modern Australian films, and it's just like it's not a lot. Love the
Yeah, I mean, you
proposition,
could.
but even that's almost 20 years old.
Yeah, I think
So
like you could count Mad Max Fury Road. I mean, there's a lot of Australians in it.
yeah.
And it is made here and everything. But
Well,
yeah, you're
I
right.
meant like outside of, Gallipoli
Yeah.
and Mad Max movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
what other Australian movies? So
Yeah, exactly. Well, one I would recommend if people haven't seen it is Holding the Man. That's a really great film. It's actually based on a true story. It's about a couple that met, like a gay couple that met in high school, and then
mm,
one of them gets AIDS, and it's like one of those movies, but it's very, very beautiful and sad and tragic. But it's beautiful. It's Melbourne,
okay.
yay! Okay, then for my number 8, I then was like, okay, we've just seen Silence of the Lambs. We're in a little bit of a psychological intention mood, but let's actually go back to early cinema. Let's go to foreign language, and let's go to exercises in tension. And I went with M, because Fritz Lang is definitely a filmmaker that
Mm,
like students need to have in their repertoire, and M is one of the best films. Like, it's just excellent. It is such a great exploration of mob mentality, of, the idea of the criminal, like, and it's obvious it's also foreign language, which is
yep.
to show like, look, a movie in not English can be good. And
And
it's
it's black and
such
white.
a yeah, it's black and white. I know. And but that's not my only black and white film, I will say that. But it's such a good exercise in tension. I
Yep.
think that you need to, and I think that week would be about the different forms of tension in cinema. Because I think that is just, whether it's romantic or something like that, like, I
Mm,
just think it's so important to be able to, when you need to, grab the audience and keep them intrigued, and show that it doesn't just have to be using fancy new tech, like film techniques.
mm.
They were able to do it in the 30s in
Yep.
Germany just as well as you can do it now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then my second last film, I did 10, by the way, because I was like,
Okay.
that seems normal. My second last film would be obviously exploring the idea of the franchise of big blockbuster filmmaking, and that would be the final Harry Potter film. That's a little bit of a plagiarizing, because we did that in my film class, and I still remember
Oh,
doing that
nice.
whole week. Was so fascinating, and we all watched the last Harry Potter together. It was great. But I think it's such an interesting conversation to have, which is about franchise filmmaking, especially in this day and age, successful and unsuccessful examples, and how just because something's part of a franchise doesn't mean you have to like rely on that to make it the film. Like it can just also be like, and I think, for example, I would show number 8, but we could talk about Alfonso Cuarón and Prisoner of Azkaban and how he broke the mold and everything. And then my final one would be kind of because I'm imagining that it's semester 2, we're getting close to Christmas, and also I think it would be an interesting conversation around post-war filmmaking and all the changes that happen around that, and that would be It's a Wonderful Life, because one of the greatest films of all time, black and white, Jimmy Stewart. I love that movie so much, but it would be really, I think the story behind its making and its failure, and then as well, I think this idea of like failure, and I think I'd be essentially top and tailing the class with this idea of like failure isn't permanent. It isn't constant. Things always change. And It's a Wonderful Life, and also Shawshank at the start of the class, it'd be an interesting exploration of this movie literally broke Frank Capra, and yet it is now considered like one of the greatest films of all time. And just looking at post-war filmmaking and how that all changed and how it changed filmmakers and actors and Hollywood as a whole. And that would be just kind of, and just, all around that would be that way to end the class. Also, because I'd be like, and now it's nice, and have a nice holiday, everyone.
Absolutely. I wrote about It's a Wonderful Life for my senior thesis, which was, I called it a business education, how film has shaped our society's outlook on business. And you know what was so hard was trying to find good examples of business people in movies. But you know who's the best?
Gordon Gekko?
Well, no, I mean like actual good people as business people.
Who?
It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, of course. Oh my God. I
like
never think
actually cared about the people at the savings and loan.
Yes,
also, Potter was a great bad example too.
I know, and his name is Henry Potter, which I think is so funny that his name's basically Harry Potter.
Yeah. Which basically I had George Bailey and who the hell
there was another there must have been.
There's not many. But like I got
just like in real life.
I wrote about Office Space. I wrote about Wall Street. It's a Wonderful Life. There Will Be Blood. There Will Be Blood was probably one of my favorite ones to write about with it. But the worst part was 1 month, actually no, like 2 weeks after I finished my first full draft of my senior thesis in December, Wolf of Wall Street came out. And I'm like, nope.
You're like, come on.
I'm like, I can't. I'm not going back and adding more to this. And I'm just like, so close. Because what a field day that would have been.
Yeah, that would have. You just like, nope, too late. Already done. I can't do this to myself.
Well, and to be fair, I didn't need any more negative perceptions of business and films.
That's true.
There's plenty. But Alice, I would love to take your class. So
thank you.
And you know, it's funny because I have a weekly podcast with Rowan, and I get to see Rowan on like a weekly basis. And he's in film school, and having I work at a college, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, it would have been so cool to be a film student. I was an accounting. And so, I took one film class. It was called Great Performances on Film. And my teacher, my professor, Dr. Mills, was super obsessed with Marlon Brando and Johnny Depp. So we spent like a whole month on both of them.
I was like, but they're so similar. I was like, that's so like the same actor over and over again.
What was interesting is we had to do a final project on an actor. And I did John Wayne. And because I thought it'd be interesting. Because there's not many of his films where like he really digs in
I was
and
gonna
just like
say.
serious acting. It's like The Searchers. Like The
Yeah, I was
Searchers
gonna
is
say,
like
did you do this? Which is
the
never talked about in film school. That's a lie. It always talk. I can't stand that
well,
movie just because we talked about it. So there are some films that you're constantly talking about. It's Citizen
Alice.
Kane and The Surges.
Where's the
Searchers.
horizon? I'm doing John Ford for my Welcome to
Yeah,
the Wasteland series, and now I'm like, every time I see a horizon, I'm like,
yeah.
where is it?
Where is it? Yep.
Just like, and watching literally the perfect horizon at the end of a movie, watching Last Crusade, and just being like,
Mm.
horizons at the bottom of the
Yeah.
screen.
Yep.
But I would definitely take your class. So, but
Thank
now,
you.
Alice,
Thank
how
you.
I always like to
Yes.
wrap this up is I let my guests
Yep.
ask me a question. So, what
Mm-hmm.
would you like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer?
That's a good one. Okay. If you could remake any film in film history, which one would it be?
Metropolis.
What? Really? That's such a good answer, actually.
I feel like because there is not an actual complete cut of the
Yeah.
film, that it's worth being able to like take it and actually
Mm-hmm.
making it whole again. And
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like it's unfortunately still so timely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
100 years later,
Yeah.
almost. And it's such an interesting mix, like
Mm-hmm.
it's that genre film that has so much
Mm.
to say in it. And like I just imagine, like I've even had like casting ideas for this, because
Oh,
every time
really?
I've watched it, I'm just like, Christopher Walken is
Oh,
Rotwing, the crazy scientist. Because like I'm
yeah.
just imagining him as Max Shrek from
Mm-hmm.
uh Batman Returns, with like that white hair, and I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
it's Christopher Walken, and he's still
You know what?
acting.
After seeing the trailer for Poor Things, Willem Dafoe could work as well, though.
Absolutely. Well, I would
Yeah.
put Willem Dafoe in literally any movie.
Yeah.
So, like,
That's true.
I
That's
think he
true.
would be a good fit too. But like, I know there is a remake of Metropolis.
Mm.
It's an anime. I would
Yes.
like to
I've never
watch
seen
that at
it.
some point,
Yeah.
but I just feel like that would be so cool to make with
Yes.
technology and modern set making. But still, it would still have to be noirish, German
Mm.
expression, specifically German expressionist, and just being able to have that kind of look. And I'm surprised. Like, I really wonder if that was like a movie that Tim Burton would really want to remake, because he just loves his German expressionism. Just look at Edward
Mm.
Scissorhands and everything. But like,
Yep.
I would want it to still be able to capture that. And also, side note, Metropolis, great influence on one of the craziest music videos you're ever gonna watch,
Yep.
Radio Gaga by Queen.
Yep. You know
But
who would be good? Denis Villeneuve could also do it really
oh
well.
my god. Well, I feel like any big scale
Yeah.
sci-fi at this point, I'm just like, well, just give it to him.
Yeah, he knows
Do
what he
it.
but he's able to adapt things that are unadaptable. Just give
Yeah,
it to him.
like that would be legitimately gorgeous to look at. And
Right?
just the sheer scale of it. Well, because the thing is, if you watch Batman or Batman
Mm-hmm.
Returns, there's a lot of Metropolis in it.
Yeah.
Like, especially
Yeah.
Batman. If you look at what
Yeah.
Gotham looks like, and even like the clock tower stuff at the end feels like
Mm-hmm.
the climax of Metropolis, which is why I'm convinced Tim Burton definitely watched Metropolis and just been like, I would love to make that movie.
Yeah.
He needs to take his baby steps back with like
Yep.
Wednesday and Beetlejuice 2, and
Yeah.
get people's faith back. But no, I would love
Yeah.
to. I think Metropolis would be so cool to remake.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good answer too. Because that is exactly the kind of thing which like it's been a long time,
Yeah.
and it would be a way to introduce the story to people who like it's just, unless you're a film person, you probably haven't even heard of it, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest.
Well, and
So
your film class would help because Fritz Lang
yes,
getting some
yes,
attention there. So
exactly. Well, we would definitely, honestly, I was flipping between M and Metropolis. I wrote M and it could have had Metropolis after it, but
this
I
is
Metropolis.
I
But
have
I,
the Kino, the complete Metropolis,
ooh, yep.
and this was 25 extra minutes that they found that they
Mm,
added back in 2010. It's still not the
mm.
complete film because they still do not have the complete film. But apparently
That's
this
so
is like
crazy to me.
the most complete. Well, there's a lot of John Ford films I can't do for my series because they just don't
Yeah,
exist. A couple of them, literally only 15 out of 90 minutes still existed.
yeah,
Was
yeah.
those were some interesting conversations on my show. And, I do my Cinematic Wasteland podcast
Mm-hmm.
where I'm literally going through the history of cinema.
Yeah,
And one of the first feature-length films was an Australian film, The James Gang.
yeah.
And it's nowhere near complete because they just don't
Nope.
have all the footage anymore.
Because nobody
It's
cared back then. Everyone was like, it's
too
just a
bad Martin
film.
Scorsese was not alive back then because
Yeah.
I still have all of them.
Yeah, you would have just, don't touch me. Yeah, exactly.
Don't touch
Yeah,
my
I that
films.
exactly. I'm surprised they haven't. Like I'm genuinely I know that there's been one in development, I feel like for 10 years or something. Like every few years they're like Metropolis is being remade. It's like, okay, I'll believe it when I see like a
Believe
poster
it when
or
I see it.
something.
Maybe
Yeah, when somebody
maybe
gets
Villeneuve will
cast
do that after because
after Dunk.
he has that next film that he wants to do, and then a
Yeah.
third Dune movie, and
A
then
third one. Wait, I thought it was going to be two parts. Is it going to be three parts?
so he wants to
Or is
adapt
it the
the next
sequel?
book.
Oh, okay.
So and
Does he just want to live in the Dune world for a long time?
maybe he's pulling a James Cameron who's just gonna literally make Avatar movies until he retires. Um,
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He's doing Cleopatra, but not the Gal Gadot
yeah,
version, like a different one. That'll probably
a
be good.
different one. Well, it's always
Yeah.
so fascinating, films that you never think would actually get made, and we're getting one of them this
Mm,
year. Looking at
I
you,
know.
Napoleon. Like,
I know. I know. I can't when I saw the trailer for that, what it was like, it was such a weird couple of trailers because I think I was seeing like oh, maybe it was Oppenheimer. That would make sense because I remember being like, these are weird trailers because it was like Napoleon and then Killers of the Flower Moon.
oh,
Being
that
like,
trailer for Killers of the
yeah,
Flower Moon, that second trailer, oh my God,
yeah.
it's such an
I will
amazing trailer.
say I'm a little bit distracted by DiCaprio's ears. Like what they did to his ears. I'm
I
a little bit
have
distracted by it.
I have 20 minutes left on my audiobook of Killers of the
Yeah.
Flower Moon. I'm
Mm.
so ready. And
Oh.
it's so fascinating because there's some interesting stuff because like he wasn't supposed to be Burkhart. Like
Mm.
he was supposed to be the FBI agent
Yeah, which
investigating
makes
it.
sense.
And he wanted to get switched to the
Yeah.
Burkhart character. And then
Maybe
you get
he's like, I want
Jesse
another
Plemons with
Oscar.
a big ass hat.
Yeah. I
And
love Jesse Plemons though.
yeah.
He's such an underrated actor. Like,
Mhm.
I think he's like, obviously people, whenever you talk about him, you're like, he's so good. But it's like, no one ever really, unless he's being talked about for a film he's in, people don't talk about him as much. But he's so good. And like thinking about him being in, Game Night through to like Power of the Dog, through to like Black Clan, it's just crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah, such a good actor. I'm glad that he's just constantly getting great work. I think Killers of the Flower Moon, I don't even know. I mean, if it comes out, well, now it's coming out everywhere, but I don't know because they can't do press for it. So I'm always curious. Every time it's
Well,
like this
Martin
movie's about to
Scorsese
come out.
can.
Yeah, he can, but only in as a director, which I always
Yeah.
find very funny, especially in this day and age when so many directors are also
Well,
writers. And I'm
I
just
think
like,
the reason that it's definitely coming out is because it's an Apple film.
yeah, are they not part of the AMPTP?
Well, I think the issue is like is it the worst thing in the world if it doesn't make a ton of money at the box office?
Yeah, that's
So I
true.
think that's why they're not as concerned, which is why I feel like we're getting that. We're getting Napoleon.
Yeah.
All I'm
Which
imagining
I
is
cannot believe that film got made, and I feel like it was like announced and then it was done, and I was like,
all I know
"Hello."
is Joaquin Phoenix is probably happy that he can't go do press.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh no."
Oh, darn it. I
The
can't go
most
promote my
awkward
new.
man in creation.
And
He's
then they
just
just
like,
put Ridley Scott out there for all the press
yeah,
for this movie. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be
yeah.
so wild.
I mean, I think based on how these strikes end up, the Oscars, if they happen, are going to be wild.
Well,
Like,
if we well at this moment, you have Oppenheimer, you have Barbie, you
mm-hmm,
have Killers of the
mm-hmm,
Flower Moon, you have
mm-hmm.
Napoleon.
Yeah,
Maestro's probably going to get a bunch of attention, and that's a
yeah,
Netflix film, so that's definitely coming out. And Poor
yeah,
Things is getting a lot of buzz
yeah.
now out of the
Ton of
festival.
buzz.
So there's some pretty heavy hitters
There
that
is, but like, yeah, it's not like they can have a ceremony without any actors or writers. So it's like why the Emmys are like, we've got the nominations. I don't know if we'll ever see the ceremony. But yeah.
January.
Yeah,
Well, they're not
that's the
worried
thing.
about too
Yeah,
much now because they don't have any TV shows for next Emmys. So
that's true. That is
they
true. Which
they can just
again, I'm
combine them.
like, I feel so bad because I'm like, I'm not super upset because I feel like I can catch up on things.
Well,
I'm
I was just
like,
talking to my wife. I'm like, my weekly TV schedule is so much lighter right now because I'm like,
yeah,
there's like my
everything's
only
been delayed.
and a bunch of stuff's ending in a couple weeks
Yeah.
too. And I'm like, what the hell am I gonna watch? Catch up.
Yeah, well, it's like even like I watched the first season of One Piece, which is really good, by the way. It's so
Mhm.
good. If anyone watching hasn't seen it, I didn't expect to like it because I
Like
never
me,
got into the anime,
I'm watching
and
it.
then it's so like I never like I didn't watch the anime. Mostly, I was just overwhelmed by how many episodes there were, and I was like, I can't do this. And also, I'm a big like I'm very specific about the design style I like in my anime, and One Piece, I don't like the design style. There's nothing wrong with it, I just don't like it. But the show is so well made. It is excellent. It's very tightly told. But then they announce they're like, it'll be ready 2 years after we can start the production. like they literally announced that they're like the scripts are all ready because I think because it's mostly written based on previous like the
Yeah.
episodes from the actual anime, and I think because the creator of the manga and the anime is actually part of the team, and obviously he's in
Mhm.
Japan, so not adherent to strike rules and stuff. So they have the scripts and they're like, it'll be ready once we can actually
Well,
do in 2 years.
when we get Stranger Things final
They're going
season
to be
in
42.
2028,
It's going to be oh
and
my
they're gonna
god.
be 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
A
like
bunch of
how big is this
16 year
time
olds.
jump between this last
Yeah.
second to last season?
Yeah, they're probably gonna have to rewrite just to add in a time jump of like, and then the world ended
Which
20
yeah,
years later or
because it like
something.
didn't make it. It wouldn't make any sense to have a time jump based off of how the
No, because of
season
the way it
ended.
ends. Yeah, unless they do like one of those, okay, let's watch the aftermath. Like everyone died.
It's like the
Or
ending of The
something.
World's End. Just
Yeah,
like everyone's a roving nomad or uh
exactly.
oh my god. But Alice, this was a blast.
Yes.
And thank you so much for coming on. It's been too long.
It
So we'll
has,
definitely
but thank
figure
you
out
so much
this
for having me. It was so
absolutely.
fun. I really enjoy it every single time.
Well, I'm glad to hear. Well, you're welcome back. So you'll be coming back, I guess. But
I will, yes.
thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.